Hello and welcome everybody to today's Lunch and Learn session. My name is Justin Gauci. I'll be your host today and we'll be covering off the topic of help for homeowners and strategies to get mortgage free. Obviously quite topical with the OCR announcement yesterday, but now it's about how do we put those macro things into practice to help you get some strategies in place to get mortgage free. Before we go into any of that, I do have to cover off a little bit of a disclaimer here. So this presentation is provided for informational purposes only. The content of this presentation is not intended as a substitute for regulated financial advice. So what this means basically is it's general in nature. It's not specific to you and your scenario. You know, if you do want to find out that information about your specific needs, you know, it is important to get in front of a financial advisor who can provide that financial advice for your situation. A little bit about my background. So as I was saying, my name is Justin Gauci. I'm one of our senior financial advisors here at Enable Me. For 10 plus years, I was a finance analyst working with a range of companies across Australia, UK and New Zealand. You know, I'm sort of a numbers person. And over the last 3 years, I've had the privilege of being able to use that skill set and my background in finance to help Kiwis get ahead with their financial situations. You know, so it's helping people, give them the confidence to get ahead and do more with their situation, and how they can get in control of their money, get retirement ready, and and in today's topic, the key aspect of that is how to get the mortgage gone. Agenda for today that we'll be covering off, I guess first off, it's why do we need to get mortgage free? What is the benefit of doing that? We're probably all naturally thinking it's the right thing to do, and I'll show some examples of why it is the right thing to do. I think half the time, a key aspect of learning is understanding the why, not just because you have to. Okay, and we'll go into some examples for that. Accelerating mortgage repayments, what are the right ways to do something around that strategy? Optimizing your mortgage, the 3 R's, refixing, refinance, and restructuring. Why you need a plan to achieve those financial goals. And obviously we're going for the next half an hour. If we get some time at the end, we'll go over some Q&A. So there's obviously a Q&A box and a chat box that you can put those into. We were lucky enough to get some great questions pre today that we've looked over as well. My producer will, if we do get time, we'll go into those as well. So first things first, why do we want to get mortgage free as soon as possible? And I think this next graph really illustrates it as best as it can, really. And as I was saying on that disclaimer, your situation will be, you know, a different version of this, but this is a common example with a few clients of mine that have mortgages of about 800K. And as you can see there on the green, you know, that's their 30-year term. Okay, that's how the bank expects them to pay back that 800,000 over the next 30 years. And you see, it's not until much later on in the graph that a lot of interest, a lot of principal is being repaid. What we need to understand is where that client is. Should they be aiming for 9, 12, or 15 years? Obviously, the 9 years would be fantastic, but for some people, the right scenario is the 12 years or the 15 years. Whatever that is, as you see there in the key above, each one of those 3 scenarios there is saving over $500,000 in interest. Okay, so that is the why. Why do we want to get mortgage free faster? Well, you're going to save the most amount of interest possible for your scenario. So obviously, if the mortgage is a bit lower, that might be 7 years we're aiming for instead of 9 years. Or if it's a bit higher, you know, we might be aiming at 14 instead of 12. So your specific number will vary, but whatever it is, we want to beat that green line. Okay, and we want to beat it by as much as possible. Next up here, we undertook a survey with MediaWorks and got a heap of data around how people are feeling about money at the moment. And look, if I'm being perfectly honest, those stats are not great. Okay, 56% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and nearly 3/4 of Kiwis are worrying about money, and over 3/4 are concerned about interest rates. Now that might be differing after yesterday's news, but we want to make sure, you know, if you are on this call, that you're not part of that statistic. Okay, and having a plan in place to know that you're on track should help alleviate some of those concerns. Financial stress is real, and it sort of can get hidden because we don't talk about it often. But putting things away because it's uncomfortable doesn't make it go away. It just kicks the can further down the road, and that stress will just build and build and build. That last stat there, 49% of New Zealanders' income is going towards their mortgage. Okay, and at the bottom there, you can see from the CoreLogic data, that long-term average used to be 38%. So what does that actually mean? Well, what that means is for every dollar you're earning, you're only getting to keep 51 cents of that. Okay, 49 cents is going straight to the bank. So if we think about that question I was talking about earlier of why do we want to get mortgage free? Well, we're working hard for that dollar. We want more than 51 cents, don't we? Okay, so that is if the mass amount of saved interest doesn't talk to you, hopefully that amount of working really hard for that dollar and getting to keep more of it can talk to you around the why we want to get mortgage free faster. As sort of alluded to in the last couple of slides, why do we want to do it? Well, it's going to save us in the long term on those interests. It increases our financial stability. Okay, it is a big portion of our living budget. So when we can get that gone, it drops our household budget down significantly and increases that stability and financial resilience. Okay, and being on top of things is going to help reduce those financial stresses. Now, as I was saying, we've only got that half an hour to cover things off today, but one other topic that we can go into in future webinars, and we've done some on these already, is it also creates future wealth creation opportunities for you or family or kids that you might be wanting to help in the future onto the property ladder. Because the equity that you create in your home can be used to help with wealth creation assets further down the line, but it's got to start in the here and now of getting that debt down as fast as possible. It's the risks of doing nothing. At the moment, it exposes you to that interest rate volatility. Okay, we're really big on controlling the controllables and not letting, I know it was great news yesterday of the OCR dropping, but not living by that sword. Okay, because then you die by the sword. So when interest rates, hopefully continue to come down, that's great. But how are we actually going to put that to work and get ahead? And then in the future, if interest rates do go back the other way, that we're not exposed to that volatility and putting everything back into the too hard basket. Okay. Next up here, we've got, that prolonging the home ownership outright, which touches back on that graph earlier. It'd be much better to be paid off in that 12 or 15 years rather than in 30 years. We've already talked a little bit there around, by doing nothing, it leaves us with less opportunities to leverage off that home equity. As we get older, the banks are less likely to relend to us, and that increases our risk for a retirement shortfall. But today is all about getting to know how you should be getting ahead on that mortgage. Next up here, we've got a neat looking graph of what's sort of been happening on the floating and 2-year fixed rates over the last 10 years. Okay, and as you can see, it's what we want to do is de-risk you from that volatility. It moves around quite a bit. It was quite neat in that 2020 to 2022 period. And obviously over the last 12 to 18 months, we've been copying those spikes. Okay, right at the end there on the right, we are getting those dips, and it's great to see. Okay, it's now how do we build a plan based off those things dropping? How do we maximize what I'm trying to say here is you've been getting headwinds at these points in time. How do we maximize the easier opportunities going forward and not just resting on our laurels? Okay, and that's what de-risking our situation can do, and making the most of more favorable conditions. And next off here, I want to actually, we'll hear a lot of info on the news today and as of yesterday and probably for the coming days and months around the interest rates dropping, but what does it actually mean to a specific mortgage? So we ran some numbers off a 600K mortgage on a 25-year term and just what some different interest rates would look like. And it works out to be about $20 to $40 per week. Okay, and that's fantastic, but we can do more than that. Okay, and first off, are we actually going to feel that, or are we just going to fritter that away in other areas? So having a plan in place to make sure we're using those advantages so we can get as best possible outcome on our mortgage-free graph is the way forward. And to be honest with you, and some of the strategies I'll touch on a little bit later in the presentation, has a more material impact on what that external noise of the OCR and what the bank's offering on a fixed rate can be. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in some coming slides. Sort of repeating what I was saying earlier, it is all about controlling your controllables and using the externals to either push further ahead or when there's those headwinds, still staying the course. Okay, you are your biggest asset. It's great when we are getting these OCR announcements, and how do we actually put it into work for your strategy? So what are some of the mortgage-free strategies that we work with our clients? Okay. Well, the first step of that process is understanding their true cash surplus. It might seem boring, but that formula of income minus expenses is the basis of all good financial strategies. Okay, so maximizing that cash surplus is key because it gives us more to work with in terms of what we're trying to target off to get that mortgage down at its fastest rate possible. So the next question probably is, well, how do we do that? What is my true cash surplus? What is my true potential that we can achieve? And having sort of seen so many people come through the doors, we've got a really robust model to look at ways to find those inefficiencies. And 80% of those inefficiencies are found in those 5 areas there. It's our mortgage structure, it's forgotten subscriptions that we might not know about, it's being probably too loyal to some of our utility providers, it's not knowing what we should or shouldn't be spending on food, and some hidden sort of bank fees, the merchant fees that are coming, or things like afterpays, etc. That rate relates to be about 15 to 20% of people's income. If we were to take a straw poll today and offer people a 10 to 20% pay rise, I'm pretty sure 99 to 100% of us would take it, okay? So if we can find those efficiencies, that's the equivalent of you getting that pay rise. So what are some of those efficiencies that we can find? Well, we'll touch a little bit more detail on mortgage structures. Online subscriptions, look, we've got it listed here. It's one of the first things people think of when they come through the door of, oh yeah, that's going to solve everything for me. That random Spotify that I'm not using, or the extra Neon subscription that we forgot we had. Yeah, that's great. We might find $20 to $40 a month there. Okay, that's only going to be $400 to $500 a year. One of the bigger ones that I've got here is on food. What tends to be the most common area of overspend outside of the mortgage is our food. Okay, it's not having a plan. It's making multiple trips a week to the supermarket. These sort of things can cost us that extra 30 to 50 to $60 every time we walk through the door. The supermarket is designed to get us to get that extra thing, that we don't need. It's the want rather than the need. That's why they want us in there. Okay, if they can get us there 2 to 3 times a week, that's going to get us spending 50 to $60 a week, 52 weeks a year. That's $3,000 by the end of it. Okay, so that's where one of the areas we get our most bang for our buck. Yeah, things like afterpays and bank fees and merchant fees is, it's just wasted money. It really is. You're getting the same product, but just being charged more for it. So there's sort of the key things I work with my clients on to understand, well, what are the true things that mean the most to you? We don't cut those. What can we improve in these areas where we're being slightly inefficient? And then obviously the mortgage is a big one, which we'll touch on in more detail. Step 2, look, we've got to embed the right behaviors so you can stay on track. It's not about finding the efficiencies and living on a TikTok diet of $1 a day, okay? Because you won't stick to it 365 days of the year. It'll be out the window within 6 weeks, okay? So it's got to be what matters most to you. One of the first costs I start with my clients is, what are their non-negotiable costs? What do they enjoy the most? And we set and protect those first things first. In the other areas, that's where you're more willing to find that area of improvement, and that's how you can stay on track. Next up here, it's all about that optimized mortgage structure and staying flexible. Now, if any of the footy team that I coach or my physios on the call, they'll laugh about me talking about flexibility since I'm quite inflexible these days. But for mortgage structures, I'm all about it. Okay, it is super important that if you are getting ahead on your mortgage, you can reaccess those funds for a rainy day, for when things aren't as easy, or to get ahead on some wealth creation strategies. Okay, so flexibility in how we're paying back the mortgage faster is super vital. Next up here, look, today's probably a starting point for it, but it's taking an opportunity to reassess your mortgage plan. Do you have one? If not, well, you're in the right place to start to listen around what some mortgage plans are. If you do, maybe it's time to reevaluate. Should I be refinancing to another bank or staying put? Okay, it depends again on your situation, how long you're fixed in at that first bank for. Are you in a clawback period? And what are the other banks offering at any given moment? Should I fix or should I float? If I'm fixing, how long for? Again, depends on the situation and what the bank's offering at any given time. And how should I structure the rest of my mortgage? And how fast should I be repaying my mortgage? It's different for every single person that's on the call today. So what our solution is we want to restructure that mortgage, and we call it a mortgage optimization. Okay, it's a bespoke model for you and your situation to land you on your right spot on that graph from a few slides earlier. Okay, this will get us our fastest repayment of that mortgage and our lowest cost of interest. So it's again going to be different person to person, and I'll give a couple of little examples in a couple of slides on what that actually could look like. Now, as I was alluding to earlier, it is great that we are getting the OCR down and interest rates over the next 12, or as of now, and over the next 12 to 18 months are dropping. What if I told you, regardless of those conditions, if we could beat the interest rate of the day by 2 to 2.5%? Again, like the pay rise question I was asking earlier, I'm sure all of us, again, would rather pay 2 to 2.5% lower than the fixed rates that we're being offered by our banks. So how do we actually do that? Well, here's 3 examples of clients of mine. Okay, names have been changed, but scenarios are what they are. Okay, and we've adjusted some of the interest rates as of today for scenarios that we've worked on in the past, because obviously the rates are falling. But here we've got Beck and Chris, Al and Patty and Mon. Okay, and what I'm going to start with here is row 1. Okay, that's that floating interest rate per annum. Now, one thing is we're all across what the interest rates are per annum, but one thing we might not be aware of is we're actually charged interest on the balance owing on a daily basis. Okay, and as you can see there's a lot of decimal points when we get down to dividing that by 365, but that's what's going to be charged out each day, billed at the end of the month. So we'll follow through on the Beck and Chris example for a bit here. Okay, so their right amount that they were targeting off was $36,000. Okay, and at the end of the year, fantastic, we got it down to 0. And over the course of that year, they paid $1,249 in interest. If they were to get an amazing ANZ rate, discounted rate that was out there, or is out there apparently today, they'd be paying 5.59%. They'd be paying over $2,000 of interest. Okay. Next examples, again, slightly similar, but different numbers. We've got Al. She should be targeting 40,000 for the year. She gets it down to 0, and the amount of interest she's paying over the 12 months is $1,275. If she was to fix that, she'd be paying an extra $1,000 roughly. Okay, so fantastic for her. On an annual basis, we're saving $1,000 in interest. And the third example, we've got Patty and Mon. They've got a slightly discounted floating interest rate there, which is fantastic for them. They were only able to get 54 of the 58,000 that we targeted down for over the 12 months. They paid $2,119 in interest. Comparing that to fixing at 5.59, that's again $1,000 saving, even when they didn't fully achieve the target and got very close to doing so. So the effective interest rates that these 3 clients have paid is 3.4, or 3.5, 3.2, and 3.6%, compared to what they could be fixing at 5.6%. So fantastic to be able to understand what it actually means in real terms, getting this stuff right. Next up here, it's a little bit more on the refix, refinance, and restructure discussion. Okay, so just let that sort of sit on the screen there for a second. Most of us who have a mortgage has come off fixed at all has done number 1 there. Okay, it's as simple as sometimes just jumping on the app on your phone and locking in a new interest rate. What a refinance is about, it's taking your existing lending to another bank. Okay, this may or may not be possible depending on your situation, and it may incur some fees. It is process heavy, and so if there are fees and there's a bit of work to be done, we want to make sure there's a material benefit for you doing so. That might be a cashback incentive or some other favorable terms that another bank's offering that your bank isn't. The most common one I work with on clients in their initial situation is a mortgage restructure. Okay, this is where that optimization fits in. It's staying with your current bank, but changing the current structure to be, better aligned to your financial goals. Fixed mortgage, as we're talking before, it doesn't have as much flexibility. Okay, so you may be able to pay off some additional portions without any fees. For a lot of them, it's about 5%. One thing that's going to be common at the moment and ongoing as interest rates fall is there are break costs. Okay, so if you're fixed in at 7% for another 2 years and you want to take advantage of some great rates that are on offer at the moment and you go to your bank, there will be a cost involved and it might not be beneficial to do so. The other thing with the fixed mortgage is if you are starting to get ahead and you're upping your repayments, etc., it's not easy to re-access those funds, and that's that inflexibility piece. You would have to go back to the bank and require a top up to be able to re-access the hard work that you've put in to get the mortgage down. So why do you need a plan? Well, look, it gives you sort of that direction and focus. We may or may not know where we're aiming for, or we might be aiming for the wrong things. So having some direction and focus there allows us to be accountable to ourselves and to the goals we're trying to achieve. And it, reinforces those goals of getting financially independent and not just sort of being a hamster on a wheel following that 30-year graph. So the best approach for you, look, it depends. This isn't me just playing politician on it and not answering it. It's because it really does depend. Okay, what is your time frame, your age, your goals, your risk appetite, your individual cash flow requirements are going to be different to your next door neighbor or the people across the road or your brother or your cousin, etc. That you might be talking about it at a barbecue. Your situation's what's right for you, and their situation's what's right for them. The other thing is it's around that flexibility model, ability to access more lending down the track, and access to equity is important. As I was saying before, banks will be ageist with when they will stop lending us money. Okay, so the right strategy for someone when they're 38 won't necessarily be the same strategy when they're 61. And it needs to be reviewed as time evolves. Okay, life is fluid. So what your situation is in 2024, by 2026, 2027, 2035, you can't just rest on the laurels of what we set potentially in 2024. So how can we help here? Well, what we do is, we understand what your starting point is. We'll sit down with you and understand what that is, but also what you're trying to land. What are the goals that you're trying to achieve? It's not for me to come out and tell you what you should be achieving because it's hard to stick to it, okay? We'll assess your capability of nailing that goal. And if there are any shortfalls that we've got, identify the ways to unlock your true potential to get there anyway, okay? It's okay to shoot for the stars we want our clients, to shoot for the stars and try to aim for things they might not think they're capable of, because you don't actually realize what you're capable of until you actually get started and have a professional on the other side of the desk tell you that this is what I think you can achieve. And that can be really motivating for people, as it mentions there in point number 6. And then when it gets time, to identify opportunities beyond your mortgage, because we're smashing it down and you're on that trajectory of getting mortgage free in 9 years and we're 4 or 5 years into it, we'll identify those opportunities of what's next. As it sort of goes into a bit more detail here, we'll help execute that plan, which increases the odds of achieving that, building those buffers and getting that accountability in place. Probably the key thing that I wanted to show you is, well, there's a lot of information we've gone through today, but a DIY approach can actually go horribly wrong. And so we've got Jason's example here, which is here's a scenario I saw. It's obviously changed name scenario on there. But under this scenario here, Jason has tried to target off $145,000. He's heard the right thing to do is to get it into floating and I'm going to pay less interest. But in actual fact, Jason's target should have been Al's target. Okay, Jason's target should have been 40,000, but he set it at 145. So the balance owing at the end of the year is $105,000. So in Jason's example, he's paid nearly $9,500 of interest. He could have fixed that $145,000 and paid nearly $8,000. Okay, so the cost of getting it wrong, there's a cost to do nothing. There's definitely a cost to get it wrong. So instead of getting a 5.59% interest rate, he's paid about 6.5% on that 145K. So that's that bit of before around how we want to get it right. We want to get it right for your situation and not just lump everything in one thing and say, hey, your target's this. It's what is the right target for you that you can aim at to efficiently get that mortgage down. And the other way. So what are some of the key takeaways from today's session? Well, I guess it's being mortgage free unlocks your financial freedom. One of the other big takeaways is most people aren't on track to be mortgage free by retirement. And if that might be you as of today, that's okay. That doesn't need to be you for the rest of your life. Okay, you can make changes from today to not be part of that statistic. Next up here, one of the big takeaways I hope you're taking from this is you can't or shouldn't just rely on interest rates alone. You can count on a plan and yourself. You are worth more, as we sort of showed earlier, than whatever the interest rate's moving by. You can beat that interest rate of the day for the right portion of your loan by 2 to 2.5%, which ties into that next piece around, what is your optimized mortgage structure to align with your goals? If that's a little hard to work through, get advice and a coach to keep you on track and understand what your right figures are. And one of the other big things we do with our clients is celebrate the milestones. That's how we want you to, that's how we know you'll stay focused and motivated to achieve the results year after year and stay the course on those, amazing mortgage graphs that we mentioned earlier. Okay. So sort of before we round out, to hopefully take some Q&A, we have an amazing offer here up on the screen. If you'd like to understand more information about what we do and take the general aspects of today's information and carve it into your specific scenario, I strongly recommend taking up that offer on the screen there. So you can scan the QR code or follow the link there. If you do book today, you get a further $100 off on the discounted rate. So if you book after today, it'll be $249. Today, it'll be down to $149. Those that obviously don't come through the webinar platform, it's a $400 session normally. So it's a fantastic session where you meet with myself or one of our sort of advisors here, and we diagnose your situation and how we're going to get you ahead. Because like I said, 30 minutes isn't a long time. It is general in nature, and we want to get it right for you and your situation. Okay, so I'll leave that up on that screen there, and I'll get one of my producers to jump on, who's been collating maybe some Q&A from today and pre-meeting. We've got a few minutes to get through a couple of those.
All right, thank you, Justin. We don't have that much time left, so let's just do 2 questions. The first question is, next year I will be getting some money through my late mother's inheritance. Would it be best to use it to pay off my mortgage before investing in other properties?
Yeah, look, I can't give whoever's sent that through a specific answer without knowing the ins and outs of your exact mortgage. But yeah, it would be good. My first thinking is to pay down, but retain flexibility. So if we are wanting, and you're in a position to be able to re-access equity and purchase another property, we can use your position on the current mortgage to do so for a deposit for that next property. The saved interest you're going to get in that period of time is going to be fantastic. And yeah, our strategy was always wanting to get you mortgage free on the home first. We do want to add more properties or as quickly as possible. We do want to add more properties into the mix, but we want to do it in a way that, offers good flexibility. We don't need to wait till we're mortgage free, but we just need to structure it fully correctly. So if that is you and you are on the call and want to understand a little bit more about that, definitely take up the offer up there and book in with one of us, and we'll talk that through in more details, because it really does depend exactly where your mortgage is at right now.
Thank you. The next question is, what are the pros and cons of using revolving credit to pay off the mortgage?
Yeah, look, I think I might even go back a couple of slides. Here is the pros and cons is right here on the screen. Okay, the pros are the 3 clients I worked with on the left. Okay, they're getting a massive discounted interest rate because we got it right. What are the cons? Well, it is on a floating interest rate that is higher than the fixed. And if you do get it wrong, you could be paying more in interest. So I think that slide probably answers that in as much detail as I can give without knowing the specific person that's spoken to that slide. But that is the pros and cons, really. If we get it right, it's a cheap form of interest and offers great flexibility. If we get it wrong, we could be paying more interest than we could have fixed that loan for.
Right, thank you. I'll leave you to close off.
Cool. Well, look, I hope you've got a lot of information, or we've scratched the surface enough today here for you to want to work through what comes next. And yeah, if that's the case, definitely book in with myself or the team, and we'll understand what it is that you're aiming for and how we can get you there. Times are getting easier as the OCR is dropping, and now's a great time to use those tailwinds to push forward. And yeah, we're here to build that right strategy for you.